All right, welcome to Pass the Mic. It is Friday, August 9th, 2024, episode 126. On Zoom, Mike Piotti, joined by Michael Gervasi. Hello.
What's up? What's up?
Dog days of summer
Yep.
are upon us. Man, a lot of rain the other day, and it
Oh,
actually it's beautiful today. We're recording on Wednesday the 7th, and it's one of those picture perfect days.
just
that we
got
get.
done cutting grass with Mr. Rob Raymond, and it was pleasant out there.
Yeah.
He's headed now. He'll be by the time everybody listens to this, Rob will be in Alaska.
Oh my goodness. Good
Yeah.
for him.
Yep.
Yes. All right. Feedback and errors. Joe Burguy sent us a hefty feedback, and we're going to team up on it. It was so much information. By the way, they're enjoying a lovely, or wrapping up a lovely time, I think. Speaking of north of the border, in Niagara Falls, you familiar with that area?
I am. I've been there twice.
Yes. So they're a nice family vacation there. Some nice pictures. She said one of the most important skills we were talking about, like I think, education. What goals for the year and that sort of thing. And she meant in the private sector, talking about working cooperative skills. We always sort of groan and roll our eyes at group projects, right? But
Yeah.
really, in the workforce, it's part of life. You know what I mean? It's very rare that you get into a field where you alone are given something and say, hey, fix this and solve
Right.
this.
Right.
In any sort of
Mm-hmm.
career. I mean, even in our career, we're put in situations where we're given tasks that we have to work together on. And when people think, oh, you're a teacher, you're in front of the classroom, it's your thing. So I totally agree with you. And I think that we've talked about this before, though. Interpersonal skills with students, I think, are a much more stronger predictor of success than a grade point average.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
definitely more so than a test score.
Yeah.
Definitely more so than a standardized test score. You obviously
Agreed.
need to have some smarts, but your ability to work with other people and that sort of thing is important. I think that's also important that young people have. I always say you don't want the famous mugs, right? I have mine still up here with the Stoltz, paying bills. But I think having a job in high school, especially when that involves some sort of customer service, working with the public, is, even if it's just a few hours a week, definitely important.
Yeah.
So,
Agree.
she piggybacked on my thing. I think we were also talking about carnivals. The Cedar Point yearly pass. If you buy it like right now, it's a bargain, and you're paying less than going to these awful, poorly run, who knows what carnivals. So
Yeah. And she mentioned that. Don't you wonder if they've ever been sanitized since the last carnival they set up? It's disgusting. So
yeah,
yes,
I don't even think about the cleanliness. I just think
right.
of the safety. Of course, my hot mic last week was about my trip in the southern fast food restaurants, and we have an expert, Gary, Bailey, and Max pointed out right away that Todd, who's a South Carolina resident, is an expert in all things southern fast food. Call him this, and he agreed with the Bojangles take. I think Max said that Bojangles is he ranks them above Zaxby's, I believe, is what he said.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear much other feedback. I think, and Max agreed. The South has us beat as far as fast food is concerned.
Yeah, he did mention that. Now a little bit more with Jill, going back to hers. The adult beverages at a family fun in her hometown, Ottawa, Ohio. Turtle races, poker tables, all ages participate. I'm sure not the poker tables. It's a family fun event. Adult beverages are served, and they serve draft beer and milk jugs. I think this sounds like a neat idea. So I thought that was cool. Max mentioned he loved my rap suggestion. It really is a great song. I hope some people listen to it. Tom Pack mentioned the Wings Brendan Shanahan trade. I don't know if that was that. I know he was on the 97 team. I don't know if it was 96 or 97. And we could easily look this stuff up, but I always like to get the listeners engaged. I'd be curious because I remember Keith Primo was involved in that trade, big number 55, who never quite lived up to the hype that he was brought in to. I mean, he was a good player, but I think that was a part of the trade. So I wonder if that was 96 or 97. If it was 97, you'd have to say maybe Shanahan. That was, the Red Wings version of Rashid, right? Helping push the team over the top.
By the way, us, not to interrupt, but us Penguin fans are very thankful that the Wings selected that gentleman that Shanahan replaced.
Keith Primo.
Yes, because they passed on Yager.
I figured that's what it was.
And the story goes that Peter Klima, because he came from the Czech Republic, gave the Wings such headaches they felt that Yager was going to be the same and
Oh,
took
really?
Primo instead. And Penguin
Oof.
fans are very thankful for that.
Maybe the hockey elite can comment on that
And
then.
part of the story too was I don't know if like I think Lemieux took Klima under his wing because he was a pretty wild 18, 19-year-old. And our younger fans won't realize this. He comes from we're a little history lesson here, right?
Hmm.
You come from the Czech Republic behind the steel
The
curtain,
Iron Curtain.
the Iron Curtain, I'm sorry, communism, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into the United States. Granted, it's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but you're traveling the country and
Yeah.
living a
Some
pretty good
money in your
life.
pocket. Yeah, right.
It's crazy. So
Gary Bailey mentioned a couple Tigers trades, Tigers and formerly
oh,
Cleveland Indians.
it was the famous waiver deadline. You want to
Well,
clear up this waiver?
hold on a second here. Hold on,
Okay.
hold on. Jimmy Dykes for Joe Gordon,
Okay.
two managers. That's a really interesting trade. Home run champion in 1960, Rocky Calavito traded for batting champ Harvey Kuhn, I think is how
Okay.
you pronounce it. So he mentioned that. Um, Tony Saavedra, we'll come back to what you're talking about here in a second.
Okay.
Tony Saavedra loved A Person of Interest, one of his favorite shows. So he loved my
Michael
pick,
Emerson.
Michael Emerson. He was also on a CBS show called Evil, and he played the bad guy. He agreed with the two Pistons trades. When they traded for Aguirre, he was skeptical, but friends at work sort of convinced him that it was the right trade. Definitely agreed with the Rasheed Wallace pickup. And the guaranteed and ball don't lie. See, I've been harsh on Rasheed in recent years as I've gotten older and have actually officiated games and been on this end of things and coached teams. I've kind of saw a different perspective, and I've been pretty critical of Rasheed, but certainly you can't deny that championship was. I don't want to say largely due to him, but that trade certainly helped push them over the top. Kevin Stoltz mentioned something, and I'm gonna talk about the grocery store a little bit later today.
Oh yeah.
Note to self: no contact in grocery stores with anyone.
My grocery snobby behavior.
That had me cracking up. My Antoine, a little bit more of a poignant one. Antoine, his dad, Antoine being a frequent listener, sorry, I didn't mention that. His brother Ashley was a guest on the show
Yep.
about a year and a half ago, doing amazing work for underprivileged kids, getting them to college and things like that. Their dad, I wanted to mention this, Dale. Mike, just for context, this is a guy I've known since I was in high school, and he was kind of like the dad that he was our team dad, so to speak. He
Hmm.
was very involved in everything. I remember our last game was a pretty emotional one because we had about 7 or 8 seniors on the team, all pretty close. I'm still close to a lot of them. Obviously, Antoine being one of them. And his dad and my brother came to me on the bench. So Dale was just a important figure in my life. I obviously don't see him or talk to him much anymore. He came out with us once during the NCAA tournament about 5 years ago. He wasn't doing well and was in fact on a ventilator for a little while. And they were worried, and he's come out of it, and
Oh, excellent.
he made it through. So I want to
I
give a
didn't know
shout
where you were
out.
going. I didn't know where you were going
Yeah,
with this. I was
I
about to be
wanted to.
very sad.
No, he made it, and
Good.
I got permission from Antoine right before the show. He said I could mention it, and
Excellent.
he's gotten through. So I believe he's still in the hospital. He's been in for over a month, but he's gotten through, and hopefully better days are ahead. So I wanted to mention that as well. Lastly, before we get to your mic of the week, Justin Verlander, this is still caused some controversy. I'm just gonna say it. I'm not gonna to mention anybody. I've heard a lot from people that still really didn't know. This is, and there's this talk, a CBS article about the Tigers and the Astros that made the trade on August 31st, 2017. The old August waiver trade system, the one that allowed the Tigers to trade Verlander to the Astros on August 31st, 2017, went away in 2019. Under those rules, impactful major league players could still be traded after the deadline. The current rules significantly limit the pool of tradable players, but Verlander did clear waivers and, in fact, was traded. So I'll leave it there. That's directly from a CBS Sports article from actually a couple days ago. But Verlander was traded after the deadline because at that time, the waiver period, a player had to clear waivers, and Verlander was traded after that.
And it had to be before September 1st too, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And his trade, I'm fairly certain about this. This was something Max mentioned and my brother. It happened like right up against that September. I
Yeah,
think it was
if you're
August
saying
31st,
if you're
like
saying August
11:59,
31st,
at
but
like
now that's
11:59 p.m.
now that and a team, if they wanted to, could have put a claim in on the
Correct.
player, and it would have nixed the whole trade.
Right. Right. So I don't know if the Major League Baseball had a gentleman's agreement. Max made a point that, you're also on the hook at that point for his salary, you know,
Yeah,
so, but
and
that
it
was
goes in order by the team that's in
correct. Yes. The
last
worst
place
team.
would get
Yes.
first
Yes.
dibs.
Right.
And a team that's in last place is usually not going to make a claim on a guy that has
Big
a
contract
huge
and
deal.
right. Right.
Or in the case of the Pirates and the Tigers, never going to make a claim.
That too. Yes.
Or the Athletics, I should say.
Yeah.
I saw did we share it in our group text that someone shared with me an image of like the Tigers payroll under Mike Ilitch compared to Chris Ilitch many years ago, and how much more it was even then compared to now.
Mike, man,
I saw it somewhere.
the question was asked on 97.1, which owner, who would you rather have, Tom Goris, the Pistons owner, or the current
oh,
Illich?
geez.
And, to
I
me, go ahead.
go
I
ahead.
want to hear your answer.
I want to hear your input. I'll give you my answer to yours.
Goris will spend money. He does it
Yes.
horribly. So, which is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree. I think that like I honestly think that he does want them to win. Like, I mean, it's not making or breaking his day, but you're right. Whereas I think Chris Ilitch does not want to throw money at this
no,
at all.
no.
And I don't know why he just doesn't sell it then, because the value is only going down,
Right.
in my opinion. Like, you're in a stadium that's getting older with
Getting
each,
older. Yeah.
it's crazy to think, but that stadium is on the back half of its life.
Right.
Okay.
Quarter
Unless you want to be
century.
like
Right.
Fenway or something.
Right.
It's not going to be. And so, and listen, I'm not an investor, but I'm guessing, and you could still say, okay, I'll hold on to the wings and our interest in the casino and be fine. So why be saddled with it if you don't want it?
It's crazy that the bar now, so to speak, and the bar is high. The bar in Detroit sports is set by in ownership, in terms of ownership, is set by the Lions.
And they're doing a fantastic job. I look at the stuff they do with training camp and the promotions they have, and the way they're handling business now with people like Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders. The switch that took place, and I think Ford Jr. started with it. Now, obviously, his
Right.
sister. It was. I mean, obviously, he had other things, but I mean, those two, that generation, have obviously done a great job.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that was what I was saying. Okay, Mike of the week. The Olympics are going on. Are you familiar with that?
I
Summer
am
Olympics
familiar
in
with the Olympics.
Paris.
Yes. Yes.
Did you see? You got to see some of the setup. You were there,
Yeah. It
right?
was. Yeah. I mean, you could see it
Coming
coming
together.
about. Yeah.
Okay. So famous Michael Olympian. We already have Michael Phelps on the wall, so we can't.
Can't use
It's
him
done.
again.
Can't use him. But there was another Michael swimmer, Michael Andrews. He won gold in 2020 in the 4x100 medley relay. Also, he's basically a pretty good swimmer. But I mean, when you got Michael Phelps, you're never gonna.
Right.
It ain't happening. So he is a gold medalist from back in 2020. I looked him up. Went to Liberty. And again, I read interestingly, and I'm not trying to get political with all this, because it said like, when you go to Wikipedia and it has like birth, all this stuff, and then it says like controversy. So I'm like, so I clicked it because I'm like, what could the controversy be? And his controversy was that he didn't get vaccinated before going to the Olympics in that year. And I guess I started reading, it wasn't required, and then like 80% did. But his line, and he gave a pretty reasonable answer. I think he said, he's been competing for this, training for this all of his life, and he was worried about injecting himself with something affecting his competition,
Sure.
I guess. So, and again, like you and I, we'll listen to people, we'll hear people out before we do anything, but I've never heard of him before this. I honestly Googled famous Michael Olympians, and because I knew we already used Michael Phelps. And I know you used the track runner, right? I
Michael
thought
Johnson, was it?
Michael Johnson, didn't you use him
I
once?
think I did. I think I did.
I think you did. So we were out of, so Michael Andrews is our Mike of the week. Definitely not as, they don't bring him around on the telecast with Mike Tirico to watch.
No.
And we already had Mike Tirico too, so we couldn't.
We
use
did
him.
Mike Tirico, yeah.
So there we go. All right, education topic. So it's gonna be the week of Pass the Mic, where we're hitting topics that are hitting this week. All right. So we have our Mike of the week is in the Olympics. Olympics are wrapping up this week. Education topic. If you were following the news, Kamala Harris selected her running mate. The current vice president selected her possible vice president, and it's Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. By
I
the
think
way,
it's pronounced Walls, but
Walz, yes, Walz. I'm sorry, Tim Walz. By the way, could be the third vice president from Minnesota if he's elected.
I
Humphrey,
could think of one. Oh, geez. Oh, Pete.
Humphrey,
Interesting.
Mondale.
My God, you brought up Humphrey. Okay. How I didn't think of that. Okay, go on.
Okay, but I heard that when I was listening to a podcast today. I'm
Yeah.
not that big of a guru. Uh, so former educator is part of his resume. Long time, 20 years, and a coach and that sort of thing. So he was before he got into politics. So I thought, what are your thoughts of? And we're seeing more of it. You and I, I'm sure, are going to throw some names out. Educators going into politics. Because something interesting I also heard is that if he is elected, if Kamala Harris is elected, it'll be the first time since Jimmy Carter that someone is in one of those two positions without a law degree.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
Interesting.
that Jimmy Carter is the last president, or vice president that does not have a law degree. So,
Okay.
what are your thoughts? Could you ever see yourself doing it? Take it away.
I have thin skin, so I could not be a politician. I think I'd be pretty good in terms of like, I think I'm incorruptible. I hope I am. You never know, I guess, in that circumstance, but in terms of like just the constant complaining, whatever you do, you're going to make effectively half your constituents mad. So I have a hard time with that. But, and we discussed this. Let me ask you this. Darren Camilleri, do you want to talk about him, how he got in education or how he got into politics? Or do you want me
I mean,
to?
if you want to bring it up, I can just put in. But
It's a good segue into who I was going to talk about today.
okay.
So Darren Camilleri, state senator, hopefully listens to this show. You never know.
Need to get him on as a guest.
He was a teacher, and he was going door to door, and kind of mentioned this recently. And again, you could probably plug any gaps in my story, but it's going to lead to something. But just kind of determined as he was going door to door to try to help these kids at his school, that these kids that he was dealing with just are dealing with unspeakable challenges that just frankly, for lack of a better expression, aren't fair. And so he decided to go in politics for that reason, to try to help uplift people who are disadvantaged. And that was his reason. What he has accomplished, what he's done at this point, that's up for debate. That's not for you and I to discuss right now, but that was his reason. Before I get into the reason why I'm bringing that up, do you have anything to add to that? Did I cover everything?
Oh no, I think he started off. His education background was education. Worked in I believe a school locally here in Southeast Michigan,
Yeah.
and sort of something about educators is bills all the time are passed. I mean, we're public employees, so all kinds of laws and bills are passed at the state level. I mean, there's federal education law, but we're mainly impacted by state law.
Correct. Yes.
I mean, but that's like 85% of the the way it works. And so I think a lot of times, and there's another, we have he's a state senator now. There's also Rep. Jamie Churches. I believe she was a teacher in Groseal, right?
And she student taught in Gibraltar.
Okay, and she just was elected in the last cycle. She's running for reelection as a state rep, and so it's nice to see that, especially at the state level. I mean, obviously the vice presidential candidate is is a huge step up, but he went from representing, being a high school teacher, football coach, to a rural congressman in Minnesota. Worked in DC for a while, then came back and then ran for governor. But it's nice to see that some people that actually live by the rules that are passed actually get in there and let people know, because that's our big beef, right? Whether it's a Republican or a Democrat sponsored bill, to say, hey, here, it's easy to pass these things in Lansing or anywhere, but you guys really need to know what's going on. I think famously, I just put a list of some famous politicians that are educators. Justin Trudeau, I guess, as a college, the Prime Minister of Canada, is a former teacher. Elizabeth Warren, very early in her career, public school.
Right.
I think it's the Louisiana senator, last name Kennedy. Is it Joe or John?
I think it's Joe.
Joe, he has that. And there's been stories about him going back and teaching when he's not in DC, like subbing. Okay. and he's a little this folksy guy that's always trying
Sure.
to zing people.
Sure.
But he currently Rep Mark Takano from California, former English teacher. And then I looked at the name they gave from way back in the past, Lyndon Johnson.
That was what I was going to talk about.
Oh, okay. I don't mean
And
to. You can talk about him, but it's very few. I mean, if you're looking, like I throw a few names out here and there, there's not that many, especially that have gotten to the level of Washington D.C.
yeah, and Humphrey being the reason why I planned to talk about Johnson. Humphrey was his vice president, so it was funny that I didn't think about
Yes,
that. So let me ask you that: did you read about Johnson and what his experience was as a teacher?
wasn't his too about? I honestly didn't. I was really just going through the list, trying to get the list in there and make sure I got everybody. What was his?
So it's really interesting when you look in the backgrounds of presidents, and I'm just going to geek out with a couple guys. The first being like Teddy Roosevelt was an athlete growing up, was also asthmatic, and his personality that came out. Whatever, and I'm sure very few listeners think of him. Ronald Reagan, I'm sure we have more people think about him. He was an actor, and so the theatrics. And when he saw the movie, I think it was The Day After, which is about what could happen if a nuclear war happens. It really impacted him so much so that it helped facilitate him talking to Gorbachev and coming to some nuclear agreements. So looking at their backgrounds, Lyndon Johnson actually went into a classroom in a predominantly Mexican American community and saw just the stifling poverty. This what we're talking about
That's what I
with
thought I remember was it was a
yeah.
story on poverty and like
Yes. And you look at, again, whatever you think of what the 60s did and, the laws that were passed, because I know there's a lot of controversies. I'll argue with friends sometimes about this stuff. But you look at the legislation he got passed, which really, in a lot of ways, for better or for worse, and depending on who you are, who you're listening to, what your politics are, you'll have an opinion if it was better or worse. He is probably in the last 70, 80 years, the most impactful president just in terms of sheer legislation, from Medicare but his education, what he passed, what he experienced as a teacher, what he saw, it certainly came out in the bills that he passed, from Head Start to arts programs and things like that. So it makes sense. And I think when you see the things that we see as a teacher, it has to have an impact on you. And that was certainly the case with Johnson. So obviously Darren Camilleri on a much smaller scale, but Lyndon Johnson in a roundabout way, and he would have been pushed there for other reasons too. But the legislation he passed as an educator was certainly impacted by that.
yeah, and I think I really like to see that people from the general public that are not career politicians do and go run for office. It's like I tell my leadership kids, don't be afraid to run for office, even if you start small. And it's not like it has to be this thing where it's above you. Just it's just outside perspective, different perspectives. I do agree with you. I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of it. And I think it's so much harder now than 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago, um, and I'm not going to just blame it. I'm not the normal social media. To me, it's not the social media. But 20 years ago, every vote wasn't as scrutinized, right? You'd go there, and maybe there might be one or two controversial votes that you had to make, but for the most part, everything else was pretty much let's just get the business done and
Sure.
go. I think now, unfortunately, no matter what position you take on something, half of the population is going to dislike you, no matter what this person's
Right.
doing for you.
Right.
That you won't even give them a chance. Me personally, that's not how I handle things, but unfortunately, a chunk of people do that. So, like, why am I going to go put myself out there and do this job knowing that there's no way that I can talk to, so many people, and there's no such thing as like a swing district. It's almost like this district's set up so that
Right.
this person went,
Right.
this party has it, and so you could we've heard horror stories, right? We've had friends whose kids have been canvassers, right? And they go and they knock on a door or something, and some of the terrible things that are said
Worst things imaginable. Yeah.
out of to just a random stranger like
Right.
that, like that. Listen, I'm not that upset about any candidate in my local area that I'm going to say something nasty to, like a 16, 17-year-old,
Right.
19, 20-year-old handing out literature. If I don't
Right.
want to elect the candidate, I'll just take the literature and say thank you and have
Yeah.
a good day. But not everyone follows the same standard.
No.
So
No.
I don't want anything to do with that at all. I get more power to you people that put yourself out there and at any level. Like I said, you got to, don't be afraid to lose, but man, like you said, you need that thick skin. So
Yeah, and I don't have it. And you know, it also I do think social media is a part of it. I think media in general, the echo chambers we can turn on and listen, get whatever information we want. Um, so I don't necessarily blame those things. I think it was always latent, just kind of ready to bubble up. This, you know, I do think there's a certain hyperbolic nature to how people felt strongly 20 years ago and everything else. I think it's maybe just more amplified now. Um, and maybe we're more divided, you know, but I agree with you. There's a lot of reasons for it. And now with AI generated type stuff, you don't even know if you're seeing an
yeah,
actual speech this person gave or not too. That's
yes,
a frightening part of
crazy,
technology. Yeah.
crazy. All right, we're going to continue our in the moment week because we're going to do overrated, underrated Summer Olympics. What do you have as overrated?
So both of mine have to do with the Olympics themselves. You know, I did a little research. I did my own research and looked into how much it costs to run these things.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And a lot of these things that are built up are, it's over. And at that point, as soon as you get through this 2 weeks, and so in the billions, and a lot of things just at that point become nothing more than decorum in a lot of these places, and you just wonder. Um, it, I first off, I'm not anti-Olympics. This was discussion on 97.1 yesterday. Are you watching? I actually am enjoying it, probably more this year than I ever have. But you just wonder, is this an effective use of resources? Is there a better way to do it when you see the astronomical costs that go into this? And in a lot of cases, the fact that there's really no benefit outside of the 2 weeks after. So that's my overrated, the billions that are spent on this.
I think, and even more so now, I think that a lot of these cities, you know, it used to be like, remember Atlanta. I remember when Atlanta got it, it was more of a developing city at that time. So they springboard. I mean, didn't the
Sure.
Brave Stadium, the one, two back Brave stadiums, you know, became,
Isn't that
but I think
crazy?
now, like, because of the modernization of a lot of cities over the last 25, 30 years, I don't know what city would want this because, like, okay, what's like Los Angeles doesn't need anything new added. I mean,
No.
Los Angeles is, and you know, did you go to Barcelona on that
We were
previous
we,
trip?
we were there
Remember we went to the
together. I
stadium?
was going to
Yeah,
mention that. Yes. Go ahead.
and the stadium's just basically a stop on a. It's not used for it. It looks, it's
No.
just basically abandoned. We used it for a bathroom, so it's still working.
Now I don't know who mentioned this while we were there. It was a springboard for the city overall, you
Yes,
know,
but
to be
that's what I'm
fair.
saying. That was a different era, and I
Right,
think that
right,
era
right,
is
right.
sort of gone. Like if you went to Barcelona today and said, "Hey, do you want to do another one?" I don't think they'd say yes.
Right. Right.
And I
They're
saw something too, like Delta CEO said they're actually getting hit because so few people are cutting Paris off as, which is used to be a major
oh
destination,
yeah. Wow.
because, and I think even Paris is saying this, like our tour, but I know it was a Delta report that, you know, they got hit with that computer bug, and they said they're also getting hit hard because Paris is one of their top summer vacation spots, and bookings are way down because of the Olympics.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
I
Yeah.
I get that's a good overrated because like I don't know, you know, you know, remember there's the rumors. I told the kids, they were laughing many years ago. There's that rumor about Detroit and Windsor like doing the joint international. You would never see it now. Detroit wouldn't
No.
want to have to deal with all the
No.
costs that go with it. My overrated is the overall the medal count standings,
Okay.
because I don't think that, to me it's a skewed system anyway. Because like what right now, like it's us and China,
Yeah.
right? Like, well, of course, you look at some of these other countries that are the size of some of our smaller states, they're never gonna, like,
Right.
what are you gonna do? Like, I mean, of course, China should be a power that's way up there. I mean, they have a ton of people. I get it, but like to me, like I don't know why we have to see that. Like to me, the Olympics are all about either, if it's a team sport, obviously a team, but all about individual athletic ability. So I don't need to see how many are Americans, who's in the lead of it. If they want to say this, how many medals the U.S. brought back, it's great. But the overall standings to me don't matter. And then you got people fighting over, well, is it the total number that's more important or having more golds that's more important? And
Right.
I'm like, I don't care either way. to me, it's all overrated. To me, this is what's supposed to shine are these individual athletes, or if we're talking about like a basketball team,
Sure.
these few things that are teams, and then that's fine. Like, okay, that to me, I like the stories. It was like what the girl that won the 100-meter dash, right? I forget the country she was from, some small country. It was the first medal they ever won.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, to me, that's the cool, like, and they're not gonna be up on that overall medal count. Like
Right.
that's what's cool about the Olympics. So the overall leaders overrated. What do you got as underrated?
So I often, I just get, just bluntly, the world as it exists today, there's so many things you could point to and say, that doesn't look good, this doesn't look good, and all these all the divisiveness and Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine, so forth and so on. This is the most healthy patriotism imaginable. You know what I mean? And it really, watching it with the stadiums, and I so enjoy the way the crowds act. I think it's such a cool thing to watch. Um, so I love the patriotism that comes with this. Nobody's getting hurt. It's nothing more than athletes at the top of their level with fans, devoted fans, a lot of families. Watching the families get a joy out of this. It's really such a healthy thing. So I think the healthy competitiveness, healthy patriotism that comes from this is second to none. I love watching it.
All right, yeah, that's true. This is something where, like, for a change, for the most part,
For the most
we
part.
can all get together behind all athletes. My underrated, and as someone that coaches some one of these other ran sports and swam when I was in high school, and that my kids went through some of these other ran sports. Finally, this is a week where football is not king, and really baseball is not king. Yes, basketball has their
Sure.
team, but even like basketball, I think when I'm watching what's on, I think the initial dream team that ruled it. I mean, I remember that. Like that was what everyone wanted to see and watch. But I think when it comes to the
I don't
summer
want to talk about
games,
that.
okay, when it comes to the summer games, gymnastics, swimming, and track and field dominate, I
Yeah,
think,
I
the
think you're right.
American mindset. And those are the other ran. And you know me, I've always never, I'm not one of these woe is me guys that why is anyone at the cross
Sure.
country meet? I'm a realist. I get it. Football is where it is. But for 2 weeks every 4 years, these second tier, or in some cases, third tier sports are talked about. They're exciting. I've been to, like, I watched many of gymnastic meets growing up with my kids growing up, and I always enjoyed it. I swam competitively in high school. I coached track and field, coached running, and it really isn't a glamour sport at the lower levels. It isn't. I mean, I'm not hurting anyone's feelings. I'm just telling you
No.
like it is. The stadium is not packed for track and field meets for a dual meet, right? Like
Right.
as compared to a big football game on Friday
Sure.
night. And that's totally fine. But for this period, it gets its show, and it shows that, you know what, this is, and a lot more people probably maybe not gymnastics, but track and field and swimming. I think a lot more people relate to those and do those things into adulthood. You know what I mean? Like, so it's nice that these other sports get their props, because there's plenty of athletes in our buildings and kids that do this and do a great job of it. So that's what I enjoy. That's what I like. And I
So
think it's
it's
very
interesting you
underrated.
bring that up too, because I had to do the patriotism thing because I really do think it's cool, and I love things that unite people. My other choice was the ability, my other underrated, it would have been a contradiction to yours, kinda anyway. It was going to be about basketball. The need, I think it's good for Americans to see how other countries are playing, the
Mhm.
style of play. Clearly, like European basketball has become a major part of NBA basketball. And on down, right? And so that was my other choice. I just think it's interesting you brought that up because you're right. There's so much more than the four major ones. In this case, obviously, not being the hockey as a winter sport, but it is really interesting to me to watch the brand of basketball that comes from other countries, and again, to see how it's impacted us. But I'm with you fully. It is nice to see those other sports get their shine.
Yeah, definitely. All right, and you're a swim dad. We forgot to mention
I
that.
am a
So
swim dad and a
all
track
right,
dad.
and a track dad. There you go. So all right, hot mic take. What do you have for us this week?
Okay, so
Hubert Humphrey.
coming off the heels of you talking about the grocery store and Kevin Stoltz's post on Sunday, I just had to tell this. because it happened. It just couldn't have happened a better day. On Sunday, I decided to go. I never go, Mike. If I'm going to go to the grocery store, this is why maybe I don't wear headphones. I go early enough that I'm not dealing with the crowds.
Yeah, that's me too on
It's
weekends.
so important to me. And I realized around 11:30 that I had to go Sunday. I didn't plan on it. I'm like, well, I have to go because I have X, Y, and Z to do tomorrow, and I can't wait till Tuesday. So I went at noon. Okay. And I was about as irritated 5 minutes in as you could possibly be.
That's late.
It was awful. And, as soon as I walked in there, I was going to the berry section and a woman cut me off, planted her cart right there, which is fine. But then, like, planted her cart in an area that obviously she didn't want anybody to step over there. And then she planted herself in another area. So I couldn't get to the berries. And this is like the next 10 minutes. So I'm beyond irritated at this point. And I go to the milk section at Meijer, and there's a couple that's a little bit older, kind of taking their time, and they're entitled to do.
I don't understand it. Things don't change that often in the grocery store. Just
It's
grab
all
what you
right.
need.
Okay, and that's what I was doing, and I'm getting at this point. I'm past the point of no return, so I swing my cart to the left of them, somewhat obnoxiously, and I come to realize who they were. Rocky Georgie is a frequent, not frequent listener to the show. He's a very critical of the show, but his in-laws are two of the nicest people you
Oh,
will
okay.
ever meet. Dana Georgie's parents. It was
Okay.
Dana Georgie's parents that I
Did you clip
spoke
them
to
with the
earlier.
cart?
I didn't clip them, but they noticed me, and I had to notice how rude I was being. I realized it was them. We
Is
had the
this your
nicest
public apology?
conversation. It's a public apology. We had a nice conversation, but man, you truly never know. And like I said, Mike, they are so nice. They actually, there was a time about 10 years ago or so where we last minute we thought we lost our babysitter for the rest of the school year, which was Kim's mom. As it turns out, it was just for a few weeks. Dana's mom stepped up for us and was
Oh,
gonna,
wow.
I mean, they are true. Her dad is, he's a food distributor, and they bowl. I see them bowling. They are two of the nicest people ever. And so this was not the time for me to be a jerk.
Yeah.
Um,
Sunday, you got to go like 8, 9 a.m.
You do, but public apology to the Georgies, also just a public PSA. We're always doing that around here. We have to always, always, always be mindful that when you're being rude, even if you feel like it's justified, you never know who you're being rude to.
Oh, there you go. The public apology is out there. And yeah, I try. In the summer, I go on weekdays. I mean, I've said it before. That's the best benefit to having summers off is to be able to
Yeah,
go grocery shopping
it
on like at a
is.
Monday at 1:30 or a Tuesday or whatever. But I'm always baffled by, I think I've said before, like you're in the aisle,
Oh,
the people, the cart's blocking part of it, and then they're just looking up and down. I don't know what.
what are they
I
looking
mean,
at?
what I get it, like in the milk department, if you want, like at Kroger. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I try to get the milk that's gonna last the longest. Eggs, I open them up because I've had frequent times come home with a cracked egg or whatever. So I do spend a few minutes, but I'm not. I know which carton, I know which type of egg I want. I know which gallon of milk I want. I want to get in and out of there. So, all right, I'm going to continue on with the Olympic theme, and I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to make it specific to the Olympic thing. And with election time coming up, they taught us in library school we don't have to be quick with information. Well, first of all, they taught us if something's not working, turn it off and back on again. That's that's the first. That was the first thing they taught us in library school was that if something's not working,
That was
I think, did you see Elizabeth Pate like wrote something like remember when the like all the computers went down that day with Microsoft
yes,
or whatever,
yes.
and she posted something. I'm like, did you try to turn it off and back on again?
Was that the first thing they taught you?
That's the first thing they taught us.
Okay, all right.
Turn it off, turn it back on, and if it doesn't work, then unplug it, plug it back in.
Wait 10 seconds or 30 seconds
Yes,
too.
yes. I counted in my head. It's funny. I was having issues with Comcast. It's unplug the box.
Mike, it works. It does work when that happens. It was
See?
Comcast.
So the second lesson was our information doesn't always have to be delivered quickly, but our information always does have to be correct and factual. And then, so that's sort of twofold. Don't rush with information. Make sure it's correct, and
Oh,
don't
you're
be
gonna
afraid to
do
say.
it. Are
Don't be
you
afraid
doing
to
it?
say. Don't be afraid to say you don't know, because there's no going back from that, unless you post it on social media, I guess, and can click the delete button. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what happened in the Olympics with the boxer, but you don't have to be first. You don't have to say anything, really. You don't have to say anything.
Right.
Okay. Unless your kid was fighting this person, you don't really have to say anything. But please make sure you're right. And again, I mean, that's a global thing, but I just think about like the people that can be harmed with the spread of bad information for the purpose of, yeah, you get them, Mike, you get them past the Mike page or whatever. It's not worth it.
No.
And if you're right 9 times, and you share stuff that's factual 9 times, that's great. And then the 10th time you screw up,
Your credibility shot, man.
the people that you could hurt, and not only that, your credibility shot, but the harm and damage you can do to other people, it's just crazy to me. And I know we talked about it before, because just a few weeks ago I said, take a breath, to wait a few. But we know there's just some people that can't do it. And believe me, I took notes. Some of you that posted stuff, and then all of a sudden the post was gone a few days later. And I see, and listen, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm 49. I'm going to make mistakes in the future, but I'm not going to walk into mistakes that I don't need to make.
Yeah, right.
I am not going to walk into mistakes. And again, I don't have to be first. I'm not a reporter for the Washington Post, the New York Times. And guess what? I also acknowledge this, listeners, whether you agree with me or disagree, you don't give a rat's rear end about my opinion anyway. So
sure.
who cares what my opinion is? Who cares what my opinion is if on a website somewhere? And the same is probably true.
I wonder how Tom, we'll come back to you here, how Tom is going to put that one into pictures.
A rat's rear end?
A rat's rear end, but also
he should look up one of those giant inflatable union rats, is my suggestion. I love those things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, but hold on. Rats rear end. How about the notion of unplugging?
Oh, unplugging it.
This thing's gone off the rails.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm glad you brought us back to that to wrap it up. Tom Pack, speaking of the Olympics, world record for the photo collage. It was in record time last week.
Oh my God, it was.
And then I also, I'm apology to the Ren Dog and to Elizabeth Pate. It was not up at 12.
Not happy with it. God, we're jumping all over the place again. Aiden is not going to like this.
Yes, it was not up at 12:01. True story. My son got into we talked about the little accident, right? Well, the day that I had to bring the car up to the repair shop was the day that we recorded. I did all the steps to get it online, left to drop the car off. Well, after just a little behind the scenes, you want some behind the scenes, I'm past the mic. You do all this stuff. It takes a while to upload, especially a video episode. It uploads, but then that's not the final point. After it uploads, you have to click the final, like hit the button, like launch the nuclear strike, click the submit. Well, I did all the stuff to upload. Then I went to the car dealer. That was what we recorded on Wednesday or Thursday, right? I think it was Thursday.
Yeah.
Or I did the editing on Thursday, whatever. I dropped the car off on Thursday. I woke up Friday morning at 5:30, 5:45. And the first thing I thought was, I never hit submit. I go running up, and sure enough, the episode's just sitting here waiting for it to hit submit, and there's a message from the Ren Dog already.
So
12:04 and no new episode of Pass the Mic.
He wasn't happy. So if you are in the middle of the process, if you unplug, do you have to start over again? If it
my goodness, let's not even. I don't even know. I don't have a doctorate in library science. I'll have to ask Dr. Rice. I don't know. I only have a master's of library and information science.
It's funny that you said that was the first thing they taught you. So first thing is unplug and plug back in, or turn it off.
No, first is just on and off. We don't want to interrupt the circuit at all if we don't have to. And then if that doesn't work, then it's unplug, and that's we call that in the industry a hard reset.
And then the third thing is get your information correct. Is that the order?
Yes,
order of operations, so to speak.
Maybe if I ever become a professor at Wayne State School of Library and Information Science, I'll just tie everything and get it done in 90 seconds and move on. So, all right. So, sport wise, training camps going on. Lions, they start tonight, right?
No, tomorrow. I think
tomorrow. They were fined $200,000 for their fight with the Giants in practice.
Yeah, I haven't seen the video, but I've heard it wasn't a good look on both sides. So
I don't know. I mean, come on, man. And again, these rosters are so huge with players that unfortunately won't make it. So who knows what's going on? But
it sounds like the two participants in this one are going to be going
to make the roster. So we're going to hold off on any predictions or anything. No need for
quick question: are the Steelers getting Brandon Ayuk?
I don't know. That seems to be like breaking as we're recording. He
Yeah.
was out, then back in. I don't know.
Make a prediction. Is this trade going to happen?
The Pittsburgh writers I'm following say that it sounds like they have an agreement with Ayuk, like for a contract, but not with the Niners for the trade.
Oh,
So
well, that's a problem.
That is a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to predict no, because I don't think
No.
the Steelers are stingy. Not with
Yeah.
if they have the agreement with the contract, that's to
Yeah.
me where it would have been harder. I think they're stingier with their picks, and I also just feel like they have 2 quarterbacks under a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
So like,
Right.
what are you doing? Like, it's not like he's a final piece and they're making the AFC Championship game.
Sure.
You
Okay.
know, if this was 7 years ago and Ben Roethlisberger, then I'd say probably yeah. You know, and like Antonio Brown was out or something, but not. So that looks like everything this week. Fall sports start on Monday. So
Yep.
athletes, make sure you have your physicals. Don't forget to register for the Sims race, which is a week from
Saturday.
Saturday. So
April,
that should be a good
August
time.
17th. Yeah.
Yep. I'm off to a meeting this evening to go get some planning and stuff locked in with that. And good luck to all of our Olympians. We'll see you next week.